Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, and welcome to a very special broadcast where we're giving a preview of a tremendous card this Saturday at Del Mar that includes 5 graded stakes races. But before we get to that, want to make sure to encourage you to press that like button and subscribe to the NYRA Bets YouTube channel, where we have race previews, full card analyses, racing live streams, handicapping and betting tutorials, and so much more. Well, listen, like I said, we have a very big card out at Del Mar this weekend. And I had to give a call out to the West Coast and bring on somebody who I have a ton of respect for. You know her, you've seen her, you always see her pics every day when she posts them up on social media. And that is Michelle Yu. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about Del Mar and this really great Saturday card.
Yeah, really good card lined up. Thanks for having me on. Happy to go over it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 3 graded stakes races that are Breeders' Cup win and year in races: the Del Mar Handicap, the Green Flash, and the Pacific Classic. Of course, the headline in the Pacific Classic is Adare Manor, the mare taking on the boys. Seems to be the theme of the summer in a lot of ways. But looking ahead to the fall, Del Mar hosting the Breeders' Cup again. Just curious, as someone who really lives and breathes West Coast racing, what did we learn maybe a little bit a couple of years ago when Del Mar hosted it out there? And is there any sort of maybe home field or home course, home track advantage that some of these West Coast horses might have this year with the Breeders' Cup being out there?
Well, I'd say if you went off the last time we had it here, which is like 2021, I think, there would be no home field advantage because we saw not only horses from the East Coast winning, but we saw Japan dominating as
Yeah.
well, right? So we had a really great international affair that particular year, and we saw results that were, I felt, very formful for the most part, right? There, I mean, except for Marshall Lorraine, there were horses that were logical winning. So, like Bob Baffert did win with Corniche, Golden Pal won, sprinting on the grass like we anticipated. I mean, the horses that we saw were very, very logical. It didn't really matter where they came from. So I didn't see any type of home field advantage there. I do think that when you bring horses into certain racetracks, you want to have a work over the track. And I think Santa Anita is one of those. But Del Mar seems to be relatively easy to kind of ship in and run a good race without having to work over it. However, this summer we have seen a trend of speed being very prevalent throughout the races. So that is something taken into consideration. Now, when between our summer meet and our fall meet, we do see a difference in temperature. We see a difference in atmosphere. We see a difference in the turf course. So that really could change. And that makes it hard, right? Whenever you have a Breeders' Cup somewhere that doesn't have an established meet going on to say, hey, what are we going to see? So at that instance, you almost just have to kind of play who you like and not worry about any kind of bias you might think is going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember that a couple of years ago, the great win for Marche Lorraine, followed up by Love's Only You for Japan. And of course, they're going to be serious contenders in the Breeders' Cup Classic. They're bringing over Ushba Tesoro and Derma Sotogake and Forever Young. So
Mhm.
another reason why I love the West Coast hosting these Breeders' Cups, to be honest, is you're more likely to get the Japanese runners coming over. And like you said, just make it an even more international affair. We already have the Charlie Appleby's and the Aiden O'Briens coming over on the turf from Europe. But to get the Japanese runners, I just think makes it so much more exciting. So going to be another great year
I
out where the
think that
turf
I
meets the
think the
surf.
mare too that won the prep race that Marsha Lorraine won is coming as well, right? So
That's what
we
I've
have that
heard. Yeah,
to look
that
at.
would be a lot of fun. So, and of course, that distaff would be shaping up to be quite the race as well, with Torpedo Anna taking on potentially the older mares now. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. But let's dive into the first of the 3 Breeders' Cup win and year in races. And this is the Del Mar Handicap, grade 2, going a mile and 3/8 for 3-year-olds and up on the turf. There goes Harvard is scratching out of this race and going to the Pacific Classic, which is why you see a gap between 3 and 4. I do know how to count, so that was not just a mistake on my
You mean
part.
between 3 and
But
5, you're missing the 4.
oh yeah, be 3, 3, and 5. So apparently, maybe I don't know how to count. So
You
the
just opened
dessert
the
is still
door for
out.
that.
But this is one where obviously you see Phil D'Amato. People who follow the East Coast, we're used to seeing Chad Brown on the turf. If you follow the West Coast, Phil D'Amato on the turf, always very dangerous, including a horse who used to be a Chad Brown horse, Rock Emperor, actually. But Rick Dutrow Jr. also has Masterpiece. Gold Phoenix has long been a staple of Phil D'Amato's stable. And this one just looks like a very contentious race, really, between the top four. Interested in your thoughts on how you see this one playing out.
Unfortunately for the gamblers, I kind of see it the same way, right? I think that the race runs through the top three. Actually, I think it's going to be Gold Phoenix, Masterpiece, or Balnikov in here. Gold Phoenix coming
Mhm.
out of a run in the Eddie Reed, but the key for him is really the distance. He absolutely loves Del Mar, so that's another big plus in his cap. So looking at him, he will have his stablemate to contend with, Balnikov, who hasn't run this far before, but I feel like he could be super interesting. Breaking from the rail, he's just going to fall over and just kind of wait his turn. And he has a really nice closing kick, so he could be intriguing in here. I do have a work to show you for Balnikov, and I do love the fact that he is like an athlete to me. So he's the little guy on the inside right here and putting up a minute and change work at Del Mar, where this is the only place in California you can work on the grass. So we do have the dogs up. So that minute and change is around the dogs, and you can see how wide out it really is. And Kazushi's on Balnikov here. He finds himself these like great trips. Look at this. This horse on the outside is gonna like come into him. And look at Balnikov, like switches leads, switches himself back, and then the other horse is like under a drive, and Balnikov's like, oh no, boy, here I go now. Just getting into the work late. So I just love to see a horse that's super athletic. And to me, Balnikov is that. So with him drawing the rail here and the way Kaz just kind of finds these seams, he could totally produce this horse late, I feel like, and close in and make a really great run.
Yeah, that's a great point. And when watching that workout clip from XBTV, one of the things I absolutely loved was, when the other horse came down, it just got close. It was like they
Mhm.
kind of bumped together, just kind of nudged a little bit. It's absolutely right. Balnikov was like, all right, game on.
Yeah.
See you later. And just like, I'm going by. And that was the sort of work I love to see. And yeah, absolutely going to be a late runner and going to be able to save all the ground from the inside once, if wants to tip out, able to do that. But like you said, able to find those seams potentially there. Masterpiece, another horse for Rick Dutrow Jr., who I think is very interesting. Of course, people who follow East Coast racing, I should say, has seen this horse quite a bit. And has kind of discovered new life with the Dutrow barn and is now kind of out on the West Coast and certainly looks formidable in this spot and is capable of a big effort in these types of races.
I'll tell you, it looks like he's doing really good right now. So he came out here and he ran third in the Eddie Reed after a little bit of a break, but he didn't have the cleanest of trips. We do have a recent work of his to show you as well. And I want to preface this by saying this is one of his slower works. The week before, he had worked really fast, like either the bullet or the second fastest. And JJ Hernandez has been working him on the grass. So here you can see he is being told like, oh, nay, nay, we're not going to work the minute and change again, my friend. We're going to work a little bit slower than that. So this particular work that XB caught was not his most brilliant of his recent works. His most recent drill to me was two thumbs up. I thought he looked fantastic in it. He was the first horse on the grass that particular day, and he just whirled out there, throwing his little legs out. He did step on a quarter like almost a month ago, I'd say. And you can see now that it's not bothering him at all. Even in this instance where JJ was holding him pretty tight early, just letting him stretch his legs here. Look at how he extends. I just think this is a really happy horse right now, and he's doing super well. Like I said, his last work was by far and away my favorite. We just don't have it on XB, but it's certainly a thumbs up. And he still looked good in that effort, even though it was a slower time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something to kind of mention. This is an 8-year-old. So I think, putting out those, you don't want to put out too many bullet works in a row. You kind
Yeah.
of want to save a couple for the chamber. So just getting out there, stretching the legs, letting the horse get out in stride, I think is so important. And this horse has been managed very well. And one of the things we've seen from this older turf marathon division is you do see the 6 and 7 and 8-year olds still able
Mhm.
to produce really big runs. So
Well, this one's
you
still a
know,
horse too. He's not even an 8-year-old gelding. I mean, he's originally, but he's an 8-year-old horse out here and just living his best life. He spends a lot of time jogging. Emily Ellingwood gallops him every single day for Dutrow, and she was the one
mhm,
that steered White Obario around in the mornings before he took the Breeders' Cup
that's right.
Classic last year. So she likes these grays from the Dutrow barn, and he could not be any happier than he is right now.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun race. And like you were alluding to, I kind of have a hard time finding a price in this one. It feels like the
Mhm.
top three are kind of the clear top three in this race, and going to be a fun one to see, though, for sure. Let's head to the next of the three Breeders' Cup winning year ends, which is the Green Flash, which is a grade three going 5 furlongs on the turf for 4-year-olds and up. And this is a field of 12 that features a really interesting pair of horses on the outside. Connie Swingle, Motorious. Listen, I'm a Duran fan, so whenever I see that name, I just want to go
Notorious.
Motorious.
Okay,
Exactly.
that's his theme song. I sing that every time I see him.
We're going to go on tour together. And so this is, but then you have a horse like No Nay Hudson, who I've seen a bunch, down at Gulfstream Park and up in New York. Johnny Padres, who's kind of a staple out in the West Coast. Turn on the Jets is an interesting horse. I mean, there's a lot in this race, and I don't feel like in previous years, you mentioned Golden Pal earlier in this video. In previous years, I feel like we've had at times a dominant turf sprinter in
Mhm.
this country, whether it is Golden Pal, whether it was Caravel. Um, it doesn't feel like that anymore. I feel like this division is extremely wide open, and I think you could tell that by just the morning line odds here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that you're spot on here. Now, looking at it and even handicapping it, right? I think the key to this is that so many of these horses in here are good sprinters, but maybe six is like a little bit more up their alley. And so bringing it back to the flat five makes it a lot more challenging. Fast Buck is really fast, but he just hasn't been as classy as some of these. I'll tell you what, Motorius should win it on paper, right? Because
Mhm.
he defeats most of these. He won it last year. Like it's his race. The two fillies, though, are faster, right? Sassy Nature, the three, and Connie Swingle, the nine, who you mentioned. They both ran 5 furlongs in identical times that were really quick. And that Sassy Nature is wild fast. I mean, like 15 to 1 on her. Like, is she this classy? Nah, I don't know, but she is fast. And if you're looking for fast, look no further. There is a work on XP from Notorious, and actually Connie Swingle worked alongside of him. And so here is that particular work. And Connie Swingle's in the front. She's the gray mare out there. And then Motorios is in between with the white blinkers. And Turn on the Jets is down along the inside as well, right? So you can see in this instance, Motorios kind of coming from off of the pace, which is what he wants to do. And he's going to have plenty of pace. By the way, that was what's his name? Masterpiece way up in front there.
Oh,
Right
that's
here,
funny.
I thought that he looked so good charging down past Turn on the Jets. You can see Freysu not even moving a whisper on him. And Connie Swingle, she's very content to sit back there, right? Kyle's not asking her to do anything. So she doesn't catch up, but she's also not being asked to catch up. And I think that that was key. Did I send you a Connie Swingle work too?
That was the only Connie Swingle work that I got was
Okay,
the kind of the co
I thought
work
I
with.
sent you 2
Yeah.
Connie Swingle works because there's another work from Connie Swingle where you can see she, like, works, a little bit more like in company because that was kinda like her doing a half and the other pair
Yeah.
were doing a 5 and they all got caught up in the same video. There's another work of hers on XBTV if you go and, works are free, just the login, and, she is like sitting out there and she wants to do just a little bit more than in that video. And still, Kyle's not asking her, but she has that competition and she cruises, right on by the competition late. And I think that it just shows that she's got a really good mindset where while you want to think one thing about her, if they're going to, blaze away, she might be a horse that just picks it up a little bit later and is a little bit more kind to do whatever you want to do rather than just be a gung ho, all the way go like Sassy Nature is going to be. But really the two fillies I feel like are going to give you some really interesting um prices if you like them.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You're right. The flat five makes all the difference in the world in these
Mhm.
types of races. And, we see this sometimes where horses can just absolutely go all out. I know following, the races down at Gulfstream Park is like that. Sometimes you just see these blistering fractions for 5.5 furlongs that, horses are just not able to sustain, obviously going 6.5. But just finding the speed of the speed in some instances is going to be the key. Connie Swingle, we should mention, second back from a significant layoff. So you would imagine even that very impressive effort first time back, winning a listed stakes race, you'd imagine maybe even a better effort next time out. And she got a 99.
Well, not yet, but then that was high, right? Does she bounce off
Yeah,
of that effort or does she come back? I mean, and
right.
maybe D'Amato's been working her a little bit easier to try and, not trigger the bounce and keep her kind of just going in the same, instead of having the big plateau and coming down. It was like, hey, we got good. And then let's just try and like maintain it by going easy and not getting her all geared up, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That you want to try to avoid the bounce when you see that good of an effort off that
Hmm.
long of a layoff. And you just worry, was she that cranked up for that first effort off the bench? And, is there an inevitable regression? Or maybe there's just a new level that she's just now at, coming off of a little bit of a layoff, being a little bit older. Sometimes you see that as well. So this is a fun race. I mean, 5 furlong sprints, I try to avoid chalk, and as you said, on paper, Motorius should be the winner. But these are races that tend to be pretty chaotic. And I'll be honest, the first 100 yards sometimes it can tell you the whole race. I mean, just who breaks well, who gets the right trip, who gets the right setup, and this thing can be over for certain horses just as soon as they open the gates.
Yeah, I mean, like I think Sassy Nature is super quick, but what happens if this 5-year-old with 4 starts under his belt, Mole Gold right to the inside, outbreaks them all and just guns for the go? I mean, he hasn't been this short before, but he deserves the opportunity in here because the field is pretty wide open. He's been training really well. He is coming off a super long layoff, but he came back in fine fashion, and they brought him back at Santa Rosa, so it was an easy return to the races for him, right? And it looks like he's come right back with a pretty sharp work up there. So he's interesting to get back on grass. And Daniel's Magic is a good little horse too, but he's going to have to try and reel him in. And I think he likes a little bit further. He's a hill specialist.
And that's one of the things I do love about West Coast turf racing is you see those 5.5 down the hill turf specialists
Six and a
and
half, six and a
no,
half down
six
the
and
hill.
sorry, 6.5 down the hill specialists, and especially as we're talking about Kentucky Downs starting this week,
Hmm.
looking at horses coming in from the West Coast, horses like Ruby Nell and others who've run sometimes down the downhill, having experience with that. So it's going to be a fun race, and the 5.5 furlong sprint, they might only take a minute, but they're a blast to watch, and can't wait for this one. But let's head to the headliner, which is the Grade 1 Pacific Classic, going a mile and a quarter for 3-year-olds and up. And this one is a 9-horse field, but the storyline is the mare, Adare Manor, who has just been so incredibly good for Bob Baffert the last several times out. And we should mention really the last for the better part of 18 months. This
Hmm.
horse has only lost twice during that stretch, and lost to Idiomatic and lost to a horse, Sweet Azteca, who is outstanding as well. Those are the only 2 blemishes on her otherwise impeccable record over that period of time. So, she's the morning line favorite at 9-5. Is it just that simple, Michelle? Is she that much better than the boys in this race?
I don't know if she's just that much better. She's just a consistent performer and she's got the class, right? Looking at this
Yeah.
field, we're a little lacking in the grade 1. She's a 3-time grade 1 winner. So I think this is a really great opportunity for her to try to, take a swing at it. And there's not really another race for her that's as good, I would say, that would give her something to gain, right? We saw that with Beholder as well. Once you clean up the Clement Hurst 2 or 3 times, what are you going to do? So I think this is a great opportunity for a guy who knows how to win this race. Baffert's won this race 7 times. He absolutely is the leader in the Pacific Classic. I love Adare Manor. I've been a huge fan of hers, her and her big floppy ears. So this is her race to lose in theory, but she's not infallible, right? We've never seen her go a mile and a quarter. Obviously, she's never taken on males. For a while, she was really a need the lead type of horse. And then we saw something different from her in the Clement Hurst, where she was content to sit and then reel in those fillies that she outclassed. But can she reel in someone like Full Serrano, who is very, very quick and classy in his own right? I'm not sure. So it's going to be an interesting ride from JJ's perspective, right? How good is Adare Manor? So do I think that she's a deserving favorite? Yes, because she brings in the past performances that say she is the best. But there's a couple of up and comers in here, and there's obviously some a little bit unknown horses in here that she'll have to contend with as well. I did want to show you a work from her, and the reason I chose this work is not because it's particularly eye-catching. It's the opposite. When do you see a Baffert horse work a minute and 2, right? So people that don't have the opportunity to kind of watch the works, you're wondering, oh my gosh, why did she work so slow? Well, this is why she works so slow. The rider on her literally is feet in the dashboard, pulling back with all of his might. You saw her tossing her head to begin with. All she wanted to do was say, let me go. Let me run a little bit faster, my friend. And instead, he is hauling her down. Now, the fact that she can do the 102 like this, she barely looks like she's cantering. There's literally horses working at full speed behind her, and she's in a hammerlock and she's just opening up on them, right? So she's got so much more in the tank at this speed, which, hey, if you're a, lower level horse, this is as fast as you can go. She could do this 3 times around. I think this was a great way to get some air into her, get a leg stretcher, but not, seek top speed. And if you watch a couple more of your works, you'll see she's always really anxious to get going. They don't normally lock her down as hard, but she finishes up and she goes right past the wire. She's fit as a fiddle.
Yeah, when I watched that work, that was one of the more impressive works you'll see going 102 and 4.
102, right? I wish
Right?
all of mine worked 102 like that.
I know. I was just like, wow. I mean, they absolutely had her in a stranglehold the entire way around. And I mean, it
She
looked
was
like,
walking around the turn, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, that was just crazy to see. I mean, obviously we got to see Torpedo Anna up close and personal before she was prepping for the Travers up here. And I will say her last work looked a lot like this, where it was
mhm.
just like they were trying to keep everything they could for that race and just like go slow, go slow, go slow. And she still went 59 and 4. And it was like one of those things where you can just tell sometimes when a horse just has plenty of energy and plenty of fitness, to your point. So, yeah, she's going to be ready to go. But you brought up Full Serrano, who we also have a workout for, workout clip for. And one of the things that really struck me about this clip is you mentioned speed. I mean, this horse just looks fast, even
Yeah.
just working out in this clip.
Yeah, he does look fast and he goes 111 and change. So it definitely delivered fast as well, right? But he looks like a big, powerful dude. I haven't actually seen him in real life, but he looks super quick here. If I'm going to give him one knock, it's after the wire. And I don't know if this is just like habit or if he was tired. He doesn't have a ton of gallop out. He looks a little leg weary to finish up. But he also did, blaze along going 111 and doing it by himself. It's always harder. People don't realize a lot of times if there's 2 horses, they get some natural drive in competition. When they're by themselves, it's a little harder to kind of like get them to go fast. He took a while to switch leads right there as well. But look at right here where the rider just like flicked one little right hand at him, like, hey, let's see if you have any more. After going quick to begin with, he finishes up fast also. So I thought it was a really good work. You could see, look at right there at the wire, he doesn't really keep going. The rider's like, oh, go. But that could be just habit from the horse where he just naturally shuts down at the wire and not necessarily a fitness issue, because watching his prep race, which was just a mile race, he didn't look like he was going to throw in the towel anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. No, winning that first start after coming up from Argentina. Of course, we've seen other horses come up from Latin America and do quite well. I think, of course, of the female Didia, who came up for Ignacio Correas IV and has had a lot of success. In this one, yeah, at a big price of 12-1, I think is interesting for John Sadler. This is a very interesting field. I mean, I think you could look at, I was really high on Dr. Venkman last time out. I
Mhm.
don't know about the 1.25 for that horse. Was able to get the 2 turns last time, getting a 1.16 but this feels like a whole nother test, especially at a relatively short price at 5-2.
I mean, I feel like if you like Dr. Venkman, 5-2 is just too low for me. If he was like
Yeah,
5-1, I'd chuck him in like an exacta box, but 5 to
yeah,
2 is not a price I'm willing to take that risk. If you like him, though, you kind of have to like Katona, because even though he beat
yeah.
Katona last time, Katona was coming off a year layoff, his first time in a graded stake, and he almost besses Dr. Venkman, who's lightly raced, to be fair. But I feel like Katona started from, nowhere. I mean, he was a maiden 40, and he's really kind of grinded his way up to the top with so many sidelines, and he's come back every time a little bit better. So if you like Dr. Venkman, you maybe just look at Katona. If you're going to get a good price on him, you might even end up getting 10-1 on him.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to take a horse out of that race, I would much rather take Katona from a
Mhm.
betting standpoint than Dr. Venkman, who last time was the time to get him, I think, in terms of what his value was. And even he got bet down pretty significantly from his morning line. I remember that day. Yeah, listen, it's like I said, fascinating race. A horse like Il Miracolo kind of coming out west, who's been running up here kind of in the Northeast and in the Midwest for a lot of his career, and has been a consistent performer, but doesn't really win a whole lot. There goes
He's
Harvard
gonna
kind of
Vera
appears.
number 2. He's gonna Vera number 2 is what he is, and if he ran
Yeah,
3rd here, you would not be shocked, and if he ran
yep,
5th, you would not be shocked. If he won, you might be like, "Holy crap, what just happened?" But for the most part, you expect him to kinda come and, like, run a good race, right?
You do. You do. And I think the interesting thing is, I know a horse that I was very high on when he was on the Derby Trail was Reincarnate. And this is a horse
Mhm.
I, thought ran really well despite having some tough trips during that Derby Trail. And particularly, I believe it was the Rebel, where he just had a completely terrible start and was shuffled back early and ended up making a big run. And I thought, hey, this is a horse that could really make another step forward in that Arkansas Derby. Never really happened. Has won the Los Al Derby. And it just seems
And
like
that makes sense.
Baffert doesn't really know what to do with him to some extent. Like going a mile and a half, going a mile and a quarter, like what's the right distance? What's the right level? I don't know.
Well, he's a big horse and he kind of has that big long stride. So I can see why Baffert stretched him out there because he doesn't have
Yeah.
like a ton of zip, right? Like he's not blazing along in 46. And a lot of the Bafferts do so good because they go to the front and they have this high cruising speed and they just rock everyone else. Either you're chasing to catch up or you end up so far back you can't make up any ground because they don't stop. And Reincarnate's just kind of like, he's like your average horse, right? Like he just runs like a normal horse. So I think that maybe because of that, he's tried to do some different things with him. I mean, he started on the grass, right? So he's always been that type of horse. I'm not a huge fan of him. I don't think that he wins this race.
I would be pretty shocked if he won this race. I mean, to your point, I mean, yes, he should like the distance. That's not, one of the few horses maybe where that won't be a question mark. But this one's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Adare Manor is going to put on a show, but I think looking at a horse like Katona, looking at even a horse like Full Serrano, if you want to take a shot at
I can't
maybe
believe he's
just
12 to
upward
1,
mobility.
actually. I really like that horse,
Which
especially
one?
the way the track's been playing. Like, there's a chance he just guns it from go and they have to try and catch him, right? I mean, that could be his best bet. And if he's fit enough to hold on, like he could be the one.
Well, that's the interesting thing. I mean, so I track kind of winning trip analysis out at Del Mar, and you're absolutely right. Speed is dominant on the dirt, and we've seen it before where a horse gets out front and they get brave and they
Mhm.
get comfortable in the lead, and if nobody's kind of pressing them and everybody's chasing, it kind of switches up the mo, and suddenly you're kind of feeling pretty good up front, and you can get a distance that otherwise maybe you wouldn't be able to get under different circumstances. So, I feel like this is an opportunity, and I know there's going to be a lot of people rooting for Adare Manor, but I feel like this is an opportunity to potentially try to get a little bit of a price in this race by playing against a horse that's probably going to take a lot of public support in
Mhm.
this particular spot. So, going to be a fascinating race, and presumably she will win or lose. I would imagine she's going to still point to the distaff rather than going to the classic against the boys, but I maybe have to wait and see what the result of this race looks like.
Yeah, certainly, and there's a couple other fillies that you wanna pay attention to, like Torpedo Anna too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just say Adare Manor wins this race by 8, like Beholder.
Right.
Stafford
Yeah.
might consider running her in the Classic without any other options in the barn, instead of the
Yeah.
distaff where you have some serious bears, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a fun next 2 months, that's for sure. And Michelle, thank you so much for joining me. I
Oh, wait,
really
wait,
appreciate
wait,
it.
you can't kick me off yet. I gave you a bonus horse. Did you clip my
Oh, you
bonus
did
horse?
indeed. I actually have the clip for you as well.
Okay,
So
before you kick me
I
off,
will
I'm gonna
show
give you
this
my
clip and
bonus. My bonus horse, in case you might want to play like a double from the Pacific Classic to the Nightcap, which is the Del Mar Mile. That's Conclude. So he's back here in the back in the gray helmet. There's a pair of horses up in front, and Conclude is running, like I said, in the Del Mar Mile. He's coming off of two maybe lackluster efforts, but to me, there's not a horse on the ground that's training any better. You get rid of Johannes out of here. He's not going to be running. So this kind of opens the race up a little bit more. You still have classy horses like De Jour that he's going to have to fight. But for a horse who at one point I thought was going to be a 5 furlong tops horse, he has really developed into a super nice racehorse. Here, even it looks like, oh, maybe he can't catch them. Barrios still not moving. He's going to swing wide. Again, that minute and change with the dogs out here. And the inside horse who's an allowance horse is being asked. Almendaris is running in the stake. He's being asked. And then here comes Conclude on the outside. Barrios doesn't even wiggle the reins at him. And look at the stride extension on him late. I mean, he quickened so well there. I have been watching this horse every single week. he has by far away exceeded any expectation I've had of him. So I just wanted to throw him out there as an extra. I'm going to single him on stuff that I'm playing. I might try like a ticket where I go a little bit deeper and ignore Adare Manor in the Pacific Classic, and then single him under on the second side of that in the double. Just I have been so impressed with him. As soon as he changed leads, he was gone.
No, that was visually very impressive work, and I had the same thing. I was like, "Oh, is it going to catch? You know, is he going to
Right.
get up there?" And no problem at all. Was able to easily get up there and get the win. So, listen, Michelle, thank you again for coming on and talking to me about some great races taking place at Del Mar this Saturday. Let the folks know what all do you have going on. What's the rest of your summer and fall look like?
So summer for me, I host Daybreak at Del Mar, which is a morning show on track, and we just talk about the works and answer a lot of questions. And then obviously when Santa Anita gets rolling back, I will be back at Santa Anita full time at my home base, and then I will be back down at Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup.
Well, I look forward to seeing you at the Breeders' Cup because I will be out there and it'll be my first time ever at Del Mar, so I cannot wait. My dad went to law school at Pepperdine, and
Oh,
all he did was talk my entire life growing up. He just talked to me about Hollywood Park, Santa Anita, and Del Mar. And I said, "Did you ever go to law school?" And he goes, "Not really."
yeah,
And
right.
but he loves it out there. And I've never been to any of the West Coast tracks, so I can't wait to
Oh, well, I
get
mean,
out there
Del
at Del
Mar is
Mar.
great, but, like, sorry, I love Santa Anita. Like, you have to make you're not gonna make it on this trip, you gotta make another trip out for it.
I will absolutely be doing that. So, Michelle, thank you so much again. And thank you all for watching this video previewing the Pacific Classic and some of the other great stakes races taking place this Saturday at Del Mar. For Michelle Yu, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you it's now post time.